All right, so we are live. So welcome to the first Ember Podcast in I think like 2, 3 years at this point. It's been quite a few years since our last one. I just want to say welcome back, everyone who supported us on our last streams. This will be kind of a night to just discuss Ashes of Creation and go over that game that we're all kind of just waiting for at this point, sucking down that copium, just trying to make it to the day it launches. Today I have my awesome co-host Kryptonic with us. He's going to be helping me out with this live stream. Kryptonic, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kryptonic. I'm, the other host here of this wonderful podcast. And yeah, like Sin said, I'll be helping him through this whole thing. So look forward to it.
Yeah, and so this is going to be a really informal stream. It's not going to be anything super fancy when it comes to production, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to podcasts. To be honest, we're pretty much just going at this for the first time in a long time. So I apologize if the quality isn't the best, but I think that it should be pretty fun nonetheless. One thing I would say is that for our audience members, if you guys are checking out the stream, feel free to pose questions to us about Ashes of Creation. We can go ahead and discuss those and talk about those topics as they come up. In the meantime, though, we do have a couple of things that we wanted to kind of go over here. The main one being first, which I think is kind of the biggest one at this point, would be PvP in the game. I know a lot of people have been talking about it in the AAC community. A lot of people are kind of split when it comes to it. Basically wanting either a PvP agnostic server or having servers that basically have the option to turn off PvP. And then there's people that want PvP in a way that's like super intense, right? Like a full
Mhm.
loot, going at it. Kryptonic, what PvP do you want to see in Ashes of Creation? Like, what do you hope is there?
For PvP wise, like I'm hoping it's like other games that I've jumped into. Where we played Arcade for quite a while, and PV was really heavy in that game. Every corner you turned, there was PvP. Um, I kind of want to see the same thing, honestly. Being able to have that kind of notion in the back of your head that like, hey, anyone could come and just jump you at any time is it's
Yeah.
thrilling. It's great, and that's what I'm here for sure. Um, it's we'll see how Ashes does it. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, yeah. I would love a game like Arcade, but without the pay to win.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because I mean that game. There's nothing like pirating that game. Where you
Mhm.
can basically be out patrolling for people that are bringing their packs, their goods to the market, right? Trying to get
Mhm.
it from point A to point B and just
Yeah,
jumping them and taking that before they can revive and try to get you back.
yeah.
There's a lot of like risk and reward when it came down to it, especially when it came to their crime system in that game. And I think that honestly was one of the reasons why the game has stuck around for so many years, even with the pay to win, is that system is fun. It's fun to basically go at it and have some type of risk when you're transporting your goods.
Mhm.
It's fun to basically be able to steal and pillage
Yeah.
from a completely immoral perspective, right? But those things were fun, and that game loop is what kind of kept that game going. Regardless of how pay to win it was. Um, Specifically though, like what do you feel about having an option for like a toggle? Like some people are asking, give us the option to like turn off flagging for ourselves when we're out in the world.
I honestly am not a big fan of the whole toggle thing, just because it's. I mean, I don't know if they've said it. I haven't been keeping up with a lot of the information, but I'm trying. Um, if you already get flagged in PvP, I'm assuming you can't go and just toggle it off, so the PvP ends. But still, it's for people that want that kind of PvP and whatnot. I guess it's nice to not have to worry about it because most of us aren't going to worry about toggling it if we're looking for that PvP. But for those that aren't, I think it's a bitch move. It really is. Um,
Yeah, I could see that.
it's a game where it's all about risk. You know, you're going out collecting all this resource and material, and you have the choice of just turning off PvP and not having to worry about what others have to worry about. Even though, yes, they are looking for it, but at the same time, I think everyone should be on the same playing field, and it should not
Yeah.
be available to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree. I've played games that do allow you to toggle PvP on and off. New World looking at you. I'm looking at Bless Online. Other games where
Mm-hmm.
you can basically throw up a peace flag on yourself, right?
Yeah,
And no one would ever PvP. You know,
yeah,
there'd be
exactly.
like one or two guys randomly here and there looking for it, but almost everyone else, there is no reason for them to give themselves at risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you? You know,
Yep.
there's not a system built into those games to encourage it,
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge reason why I think those games have also kind of died over the years. You know, it
Yeah.
basically became a PvE only game. And the main draw to those games originally were PvP. You know, most people were joining it for the survival aspects in New World, the PvP in New World. Same with Bless Online. Um, I feel like, you know, it honestly takes away half of the game when you give the people the option to toggle PvP. Now,
Absolutely.
that being said, you know, there has to be a reward for turning on PvP all the time. You know, that reward in Ashes is basically getting home with your goods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's basically, you know, controlling a region of the map, controlling the resources in your area, dominating the local economy, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's your reward. You know, you basically gain that over other people if you're able to control that area. Whereas in other games, I feel like the reward really wasn't there, which, you know, is kind of also one of the reasons why people just didn't see the need to turn on PvP.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Absolutely. Like
Um,
it's. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. I was gonna say, like, when it comes down to it, I feel like people are afraid in a sense of losing stuff, which makes sense. You know, that's a very common thing in like games like Rust or other survival type games. We call it like gear fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they don't want to lose something. Um, but the fact is, like games like that to me, where you have no chance of losing anything, they get boring. You know, there's not really any reason to keep me there. You know, there's no anticipation of risk, so you're not really changing how you play. You know, you're just taking the easiest routes at that point, and everything else becomes an inconvenience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so with that being said, when you look at games that have been successful in PvP, like what aspects of let's say Archgage, what aspects of those games have you kind of enjoyed the most about PvP specifically?
Specifically, it's the bigger PvP. Like I'm not so much one for the one-on-ones. Um, I love the group content where you're faced with not even just a party against a party, but you know, guild versus guild stuff, or even worse, just like a larger party, let's say 20 or so people, just pitted against each other. Like that right there is the big thrill, being able to jump into that and going into, let's just say, a zone, right, where you have to collect a certain amount of items or kill a certain amount of things, but then you have to also contest with another group where they could choose to just go on the quest and not do any PvP, but you have that choice to turn around and say, hey, you know what, let's go fuck those guys up and just
Yeah.
crash into them and then it's an all-out brawl. That
Yeah,
right there
see,
is
that's fun. Would you want to tell the story about like the time that we were facing off against Yada when we first jumped on Arcade?
oh god, I can't even remember how that all started. I think it was because we looted the Daisy within our brothel that we had made. And after that, some drama went on, and then a bunch of neckbeards decided, hey, you know what? We're gonna defend this Daisy. And every turn I think we took, there was always a Yada member, and they were always trying to somehow start some kind of drama with us. And it either turned into PvP or just shit talking in the world chat. It was great.
Yeah.
Um, there was a couple of moments where we had big skirmishes with it too. Whether we were stealing some of their packs, they were stealing some of ours. Um, but that's the stuff I live for right there. start drama with a guild, even if it's not like huge toxicity between it. It's kind of like more of like a friendly poke every now and then.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And like those are memories that you build, those are things that stick with you, huge impressions
Yeah.
of like these crazy moments in a game like that. Um, yeah, like reading the chat, what Ethernir is saying, like even though they were way higher geared than us, our coordination, our individual talent combined into that teamwork allowed us to succeed against them. Because they were
Absolutely.
mostly mostly role players, mostly pay to win guys, and they
Hmm.
sucked at PvP ultimately.
Yeah.
But even though we were lower geared, we basically were able to overcome them because of that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I personally hope Ashes does a little bit differently than Arcage. In Arcage, the gear disparity was a pretty huge factor,
Hmm.
to where a lot of times skill wouldn't win out. So I do hope that skill is a bit of a more of a factor in Ashes than it was in Arcage. That they
Hmm.
make gear a little bit less of a factor overall, which
Hmm.
I think they're going to based off of what Steven has said before.
From what I've seen, I believe so.
Yeah. Now Dova says he agrees with you that it is a bitch move to toggle on or off PvP.
Hmm.
He says, but it does make it a bit easier for gatherers or low level players to travel without getting PK'd. But then it takes away the chance to have friends protect you while you gather. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
In that regard, if let's just say that they do put in this toggle mechanic, right? I think it should be specifically only allowed if you are a lower level person. Like, let's just say you are a new player coming in, and let's just say it's you got a bunch of like I'll say level 50 people sticking around the area because they're also farming. The level 50 people shouldn't be going and ganking a level 10 character anyways, but people are going to do it because they can. But I believe then a new player should have that option to be able to toggle that on so they can't be attacked. And there should be, let's just say they can't, that level 10 character can't be attacked until it's like at least level 40 by these level 50 people. There should be like a 10 level, I think, barrier there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as for gatherers and stuff like that, and let's just say you are a pretty high level gatherer, and you could, face off maybe in a 1v1, but a group does get brought to take you down because you have so many resources. I think that stopping that from happening with toggle is still kind of shitty because I mean you could be out there for let's just say 16 hours gathering all this loot, where someone that doesn't have this toggle is doing the same thing, but they get their ass kicked and they get all their shit taken, but you don't, and you have nothing to worry about because you don't want a PvP. Yeah, I think it should be fair for everyone in that respect.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And I think that there's a good way to also prevent people from abusing a system like that where they are protected at a lower level
Hmm.
by stopping them from gathering higher level resources and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That way they're not just trying to karma bomb you with like stuff, right? Like if you
Hmm.
kill them, you don't just get a ton of corruption because they know that they're pretty much impervious to that, right?
Yeah.
Um, all right. And so Ethernir says, I think the idea of no PvP allowed until a certain level could be interesting, but it would eliminate early opportunity for PvP. And I would say
Hmm.
to that, Arcade actually does a pretty good system where within a certain level difference, you can fight people. So like let's
Yeah.
say if you're level 10, people from level 5 to level 15 could fight you, you know?
Mhm.
Basically within like a 10 or 5 to 10 level difference,
Yeah.
you're basically open game.
Yeah. I think in Arcade it's a 15 level. Like even
Yeah.
that's good too.
Yes, exactly. So beyond that though, with Ashes, I know a lot of people are kind of like, fear mongering saying, hey, I think that because this game has always on PvP, people are always going to be able to kill you. That the game's going to die, right? Then
Yeah.
people aren't going to like it. That the World of Warcraft Andes are going to basically run away. Do you feel like that's going to be true? Do you feel like it matters?
That's a hard one. I don't think it matters too much. It's gonna happen. Um, can't really get away from it. You're really not gonna get away from it at all. Um, yeah, I don't think it's a big thing. I don't think it's a big deal, to be honest, in my opinion. But I mean, if you have another side to that and you think it is a big deal, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't think you can expect the game to retain 60% of its player base that starts, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Like just the way that MMOs tend to go these days, I feel like people jump on the bandwagon. They jump on what games that their favorite streamers playing
Mm-hmm.
for that month, for that week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that streamer goes away, or as soon as the hype around it kind of dwindles a little bit, they jump onto the next hot thing. And this has been extremely true for pretty much every single MMO and every single new game that's launched. Most games, don't really grow past the initial, wave of people that try it out.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that I don't think over the long term that Ashes will grow. I do think that it will grow over a very long period, but it is a niche game, and I think that it really thrives in the niche that it's trying to go for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is specifically people that enjoy PvP, people that enjoy crafting, people that enjoy really good PvE content. But they don't necessarily want just one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
They want a bit of everything, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, if you look at games like World of Warcraft, you look at games like Final Fantasy, those games have survived, but they've definitely dwindled over time, mostly because they really only focus on one or two things, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas games like let's look at Albion Online, you can do a bit of everything in that game, and it's grown in popularity. It's one of the most popular MMOs at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think that can be true for Ashes as well.
So yeah. Um, can you give me just 1 second? I gotta go unlock the door for my partner. They're locked outside.
Yeah, that's
Just
fine.
give me 1 second.
You're fine. I'll go ahead and talk about chat here for a second. Now, Dova says that maybe below a certain number of items in your inventory, you get a protection status. That way, you aren't constantly being hunted. So, I think it's important to remember that you're not going to drop items out of your inventory unless you're corrupted. So, unless you've been the one going around PKing people without them fighting back, you're not going to risk dropping your stuff. The only time that that's not going to be true and that you would drop things is you drop resources. So, like specifically crafting materials, stuff to build things with, raid materials, for
I have
example.
returned that. Very sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Welcome back. So, I was just responding to what Dova said about basically maybe having a certain number of items in your inventory could have protection so that way you're constantly being hunted. And I was just saying, well, in this case, you're not going to have to really worry about losing stuff unless you're corrupted or unless you're carrying like a lot of materials.
Mm-hmm. Well, people are going to be out there for hours. I guarantee it, farming and stuff like that before they return. They're going to try and take the most stealthy path back to where they need to go. So, I mean, people are definitely going to be out there looking for those people because, hey, that's a lot of loot that they could get their hands on. But
Oh
at the
yeah,
same time, I do agree that there should be kind of like you could have in your inventory like safe pockets where so you could have like 1 or 2 or 3 stacks that are safe in your inventory, and if you go over that, whatever's not in those safe pockets, then it can be taken from you.
yeah, that might work. Although, see, that's kind of how like Tarkov does it, where you have
Mm-hmm.
like a little like a pouch you can hide some really important stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of see that being a thing, but then you would just hide your best crafting materials in there, and you'd only ever get like the crappy stuff from killing someone.
But I mean, if someone's out there for let's say, a couple hours, right, and they get
Yeah.
I don't know 5 or 6 drops that are like really rare, but they don't stack, right? They
Right.
have to
Yeah.
choose which ones they're going to put in that. Like if they have 2 or 3 like slots that can't be looted,
Right.
they're going to lose some of these rare materials. And I highly doubt people are going to go out for only a couple of minutes, end up getting a couple rare drops or good material, right, and then go right back because there's so much time wasted when you could stay in that farming spot and farm for literally an hour or two, get all this resource,
Yeah.
and then make your trek back, right? So
True.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to get those rare items and have them stolen from them if that is something that
Yeah.
they would be looking at doing.
That's fair. I would say that's probably fair to have like maybe one or two slots you can like get some of your best stuff protected,
Mhm.
but yeah, it would definitely need to be limited
Oh,
to
100%.
kind of prevent people from just like, oh, I'm gonna like put like my mithril in this, and then no one's ever gonna get my mithril. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Um,
Yeah. But I mean, so like personally, I'm gonna be one of those guys that will go around hunting caravans.
mhm.
Like which is an open world PvP zone, right? It's like it's a non-option essentially. If you're running a caravan, you're gonna have someone attack you.
Yep.
Um, which I think is healthy for the game and encourages competition. It's going to really encourage large guilds to coordinate pretty well to go get
Mhm.
those
Yeah.
and to go protect them as well. Like you don't want your stuff getting looted halfway
Mhm.
through.
Yeah.
Um, so like for me personally, I'll probably be spending most of my time hitting those, hitting the ones on the ocean.
Mhm.
I actually have a theory that you could probably starve out a node by completely stopping people from getting stuff in and out of the node, like the resources that the node needs to keep from de-leveling.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. What do you think about that? What does your chaotic neutral side think about that?
I'm gonna be out there with you. To be honest, I will be out there fucking those caravans up, and like anytime one's called, I will stop what I'm doing, even if I'm grinding in a dungeon or something. I will come and help because that is huge loot, that is huge resources. That's gonna help the guild in the long run, and I would rather sacrifice my time and my XP that I could be gaining to better help the entire guild with all of those resources.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree, man, 100%. And Aethernair says, yeah, he's gonna help us out too, which would be good. Although we'll have to make sure Eth has enough time to level. So
Yep, yep.
yeah,
I mean, I guarantee he's going to be one of our pocket healers, so it shouldn't be too hard.
100%, 100%. All right. So I mean, we'll have to funnel in resources to those guys.
Yep.
Um, okay. So as far as that goes, let's take a look here and see what our next topic should be. 1 second. So actually, talking about caravans, one of the biggest pieces of news that dropped for PvP in Ashes is that
Hmm.
the ocean is going to be this massive, lawless PvP zone. That PvP is always going to be toggled on. There's not going to be any corruption in it. It's just going to be, winner takes all.
Oh shit.
Now, with the world being flat, flat Earth,
Hmm.
that's the
Hmm.
truth. All right,
Yep.
just saying.
Absolutely.
Um, with no circumnavigation of the world, that means that people are going to have to take direct routes to try to get their stuff from point A to point B.
Yep.
How do you think piracy? How do you think the ocean, the open waters, is going to feel like? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be chaos? Is it going to be a nightmare? Like, what are your opinions about that?
It is 100% going to be a nightmare, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were literal groups on the ocean that stayed out there 24/7 all the time just to be able to find those people that are taking those routes. And there's going to be people that are going to try and map out the entire ocean and try and find out where those people are going to be camping in that ocean, right? And they're going to try and take the long way around. So there's going to be a lot of jumping around in the ocean. There's going to be a lot of PvP there,
Oh
and
yeah,
I plan to be a part of it.
hell yeah, yeah. My chaotic evil side is like, yes, give me the
Yes,
booty. I
go
shall
ball.
destroy. Yeah, no, I mean some serious RP is gonna happen there. Some serious
Mhm.
blood is gonna be spilled. Um, what do you think the tactics will be? Like, what's gonna be the optimal way to hunt down people to go steal their shit?
I see it as there's going to be guilds out there that have, let's just say, 3 or 4 ships going at a time. Um, because I think anything less than that, you're just asking to be targeted. So I will guarantee that you're going to have guilds out there that are definitely taking on 3, 4 ships at a time. And I hope we're doing the same thing because
Yeah,
I mean that's just the best option. Even more, or just having big ships with a lot of members on it.
yeah,
Um,
okay,
and it's going to be chaos. And until we really jump in, it's hard to say how that's all going to work. A lot of people may even just avoid the ocean altogether, for the most part, as best they can, and try to find ways around it, considering it is a There's no toggle for safety. It's PvP through the whole thing. So you could have people camping fucking under the water waiting for a ship to come by and they'll fucking hop on it just to kill you. I
Yeah.
guarantee you that's gonna happen.
Oh yeah,
So
100%.
I think a lot of people at first it's gonna be a dead zone. Not a lot of people are gonna be going there. Or I could be wrong, if we go to one of like the really PvP oriented servers, maybe it's gonna be full the first day and people are gonna be getting ships out there and trying it out. It's hard to say,
Yeah.
but I think I'm going to be one of the people that are trying to get out there the fastest. I want to get those ships going, and I want to sail that sea and kick some ass.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that Steven's pretty smart about basically giving people incentive to have to travel across the ocean.
Yes.
One of the things that I've been looking at is the different resource biomes in the world. There's some
Hmm.
distinct differences between the Western continent and the Eastern continent, and then some of the islands.
Yeah.
He's also mentioned quite a few times that there's going to be content in the water that's going to be pretty important. So I'm guessing there's
Hmm.
going to be some raids, some castles, some other things that will really encourage people to have to kind of go out and explore
Hmm.
if they want to actually get the best shit, or if they
Yeah.
want to be able to get the resources that they need that's on the other side of the map.
Yeah. Um, Actually, speaking of that, because you said water content and possible castles in that area, if there's a castle, like let's just say right on the coast, have we heard anything? Because I certainly haven't. Of there being let's just say there is a castle being taken down. Like there's a big fortress raid going on. If you take ships and like kind of like take it out onto the sea, kind of directly beside what's happening, can you use those ships to also bombard that castle as well?
I think that
Is that a,
question was asked at some point. I don't remember what Steven's answer was, but I feel like he mentioned there was some aspect to it that it might be possible, although I don't know for sure.
okay?
Because it was like from a stream like 2 years ago.
Okay, I would love to really find that out because that's going to be huge as well. Because
Yeah.
if well, we had end up getting our hands, if we get unlucky and get a ship or get a node that's right on the water there, we definitely have to watch out for that.
Oh, 100%.
If that
All
is
right.
something that happens, because that's going to suck.
Yeah. So Kawaki 123, thank you for the follow. She or he says, will the guild have scout teams for when large gathering or transport groups are moving through the nodes? What do you think?
I believe so. Yes, absolutely. Having those scout teams is going to be actually pretty important. Um, just keeping an eye on what's going on, because well, I mean, we don't want to miss any of that good, sweet loot that could end up happening, right? Um, and from node to node, it's going to be nice to have those eyes and ears on what's going on up there.
Yeah.
So scout teams, I think 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And also, when it comes down to it, people are going to have alt accounts, like a separate account up on their second monitor, for example, that will let them see when caravans are leaving specific nodes that they're watching.
Yeah,
Like that's one thing I'm going to personally do is have multiple accounts running, so I can just constantly monitor different nodes that are nearby that we want to hit. That to me is kind of one of the more important aspects of this game, which is intelligence, right? To
yeah,
the point of Kawaki, scouting is a huge intelligence gathering aspect. Making sure that we're not going to run headlong into a Zerg, for example. Like that's going to be pretty big because there's going to be some groups out there with 500, 600 plus players that could just mow you down. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, right? Like those groups will exist in this world just because, there's guilds like that. So I think having a really good intelligence network, having people running ahead of the group just to keep an eye out on the road is going to be something we'll have to do.
yeah. I 100% agree with.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the follow, Nicholas the Bunny. I appreciate it. So when it comes down to it, we've talked about PvP. We've talked about, like the ocean, all that content. One thing I wanted to go over next was the guild node system, and how the guilds are going to interact with the node system itself. This is one of the questions that one of our community members had posed to us. How do you feel like the guilds in general will interact with like the nodes themselves? Do you feel like a guild's going to be able to take over a node? Do you feel like that they're going to basically have too much influence? Are they always going to be the ones running it? What do you think?
It's a hard one. I haven't seen a whole lot just because I've been away for quite a long time about talks about nodes, except for the early node stuff. So I'm a bit behind on a lot of that, and I don't know if there's any information that you have that I don't have yet. um, that one's a real tough one for me because I don't know how the whole system works with that and taking over and
Okay,
whatnot. Um, if Well, what's your take on it first, and then I might be able to add something into there
sure.
if I get more information about it.
Yeah, of course. So personally, from what I understand, most node sizes are going to be about 2,500 people, right? It's like that's going to be your typical metropolis sized node. So 2,500 people living there, going there every single day, leveling it up. Basically that's what you're looking at. When it comes down to it, I think it's going to be very difficult for most guilds to control a node. In fact, I think
Mhm,
it'll be downright almost impossible for most guilds to do that. However, there are some guilds out there that will have the numbers, just the sheer numbers of people to do it. But on those servers are going to cannibalize themselves pretty quickly. Um, for the sheer fact that most people don't like to lose, and if there's a group
yeah.
that big running around, they're going
Mhm,
to jump to another server, and
yeah.
then it'll basically just be that group, kind of just circle jerking, right? Like just hanging out them by themselves essentially.
Yeah.
So I think most of the time you don't have to worry about it. I think there'll be a lot of politics involved in a node, especially when it comes to electing a mayor or to choosing a mayor.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be a lot of backstabbing and a lot of backroom deals trying to get made for that.
Yeah, and people are going to funnel resources and stuff into a certain person. Hey, just like an election. Let's say it's going to be just like that. And there's going to be some
Hmm.
problems with it. And as long as we can, make sure we place the members that we want in there and we trust them and we can make sure things are working on our side perfectly, and that's all we can really hope for. It's hard to see how that's all going to play out, honestly. Um, but yeah, I definitely agree. The politics are going to be extremely heavy when it comes to minutes.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun for me personally, just because I love drama.
Yeah, I'm more of the gathering and PvP type. So while
Yeah.
you're doing the politics, I'll be out kicking ass. Okay, that's how we'll do this.
Have we played a game yet that I haven't started in a war in? I don't think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no, I don't think so either. And then you've dragged me into it. Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah.
that's how it's worked out.
So I think the nodes that will really succeed are the ones that manage to have that cohesion. Like go into it basically with a few other guilds off the bat, and figure out how to work together, like have a
Hmm.
hierarchy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The nodes that don't have that and are just people, they're constantly bickering, constantly fighting. Those are the ones that are going to lose the sieges. Those are the
Hmm.
ones where a strong man,
Hmm.
like a large guild is going to have to come in and just, basically lay down the law, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, those nodes will fail, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're just not going to be coordinated enough, and when someone comes to siege it, it's going to fall apart. So having like that pre-made alliance ahead of time, having those relationships built, being willing to compromise is going to be a big aspect in making a node successful.
Yeah.
Um, speaking of which, we still haven't gotten a nodes part three. Steven, if you're listening to this, which I doubt, but where's my nodes part three, bro?
We've been waiting a long time for it.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
uh, as for the connections, as you were saying, making those alliances before things get hairy. And I mean, we're already working on that. We've been working on that for a hell of a long time. Um, I don't want to say who or anything or point names, but do we still have those connections? Or
yeah.
are we in the dark?
We have a few. So
Okay.
that's one of the good things about about someone being as obsessive as I am. I like to keep
Fair.
things like that going over time.
Okay.
Obviously, the hard part is going to be seeing who's actually worth their salt once we get into game.
Yeah.
which I think Ashes is going to have a nice bit of time that we can figure that out before we actually get to launch, right? Like the Alpha 2 period, being a persistent launch is going to really help us figure out who do we actually want to work with.
Mhm.
There's a couple of guilds that we are, friendly with, one guild or two guilds that we're allied with, that will be helping us out during Alpha 2. And if it turns out that they're just, basically not really what we want, we'll part ways. No harm, no foul. And the same should go for them. If we're not up to snuff with it, what they want, I'd rather that they let us know then, and
Yeah.
we can improve, than rather than just being unhappy together, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that being said, one of the things that is going to be definitely manipulated is taxes, uh, in different nodes.
Mhm.
How do you feel like people being able to reach 100% tax rate on a node is going to work out? I mean, obviously they don't get the taxes themselves, but like,
Mhm.
what happens if like one of your enemy guilds gets a guy in there for long enough and gets him into mayor, where then he just nukes the town?
At that point, you're fucked. So you really got to be, watching who you get in there. Um, and I mean, there is possibly already people within the guild and in or other guilds that are planning this and have people ready for it, um, which is a bitch. And we really have to. Hopefully, we can find trustworthy people and
Yeah.
people that aren't going to stab us in the back for that. Um, like I said, I guarantee there's already people within the Discord in other guilds that are working on this. We just have to be careful.
Yeah.
Because if it happens, we're screwed. There's not a whole lot you can do once they get their hands on that node. They become mayor, they can just screw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. All right, give me a second here. I'm gonna see if I can get in Blazebot for a moment.
All
He's gonna
right.
be one of our next guests. One second here.
Perfect, perfect. And I'll be helping Cypher. Thank you, F. I know you'll be helping me. You'll be there being my pocket healer. We're going to make a real good duo.
Oh yeah. All right, you guys are gonna hear a little bit of a change in just a second. Sorry for this in advance. We're just working through some of the kinks as one of our first streams. Just give me one moment here. All right, perfect. We're
Hello.
back. Hey, Blazebot. All right, we are live on this. We're just wanting to basically go over one of the guest topics here, which Blazebot's gonna be part of. He wanted to participate in this live stream, and that's going to be something that we are actually going to be encouraging to have people that are part of our community jump on for like a 10, 15, 20-minute segment so they can talk about a topic as well with us. um, Blazebot, do you want to introduce yourself real quickly to the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Blazebot 7000. I've been with, I guess, uh, Ember for what, 4 years now. So just kind of been around the block and played a ton of games with these guys, and they've been a lot of fun to play with. Been following Ashes of Creation for about the same amount of time as I've been on Ember, and been really, really excited for everything that I've seen coming out of Ashes of Creation's live streams, um, and specifically about the way that they're doing nodes and how that's going to help kind of shape the world and keep it dynamic and lively. So that's definitely something
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to in the space.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. And yeah, dude, you've been with us for 4 years. We've had people here, like Cypher or Kryptonic. He's been here as well for a really long time. At the end of the day, Ember is really strong and we're just continuing to grow. So I'm glad you've been with us for so long. Um, let's go over your topic specifically. Now, you mentioned that you would like to talk about node citizenship and guild membership and how they affect player choice in Ashes of Creation. Do you want to kind of just introduce that topic to us and what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in traditional MMO or the MMOs, um, guilds are kind of the leading social organization. They are the driving factor between most interaction between players. Um, and in many MMOs, uh, even like cities, towns, or node-like structures in those MMOs can be even owned by guilds. Um, so in Ashes of Creation, it seems like they're not steering away from that traditional guild social organization, which is really interesting because they're then introducing a very different overlapping social organization, which is the node citizenship. And as people are becoming citizens within a node, um, how they are affected by, I guess, the pulls and I guess pushes of the politics of guilds versus guilds, and then the pulls and pushes of politics between nodes and trying to, I guess, level up your node and make it, the best one around. Um, those could be conflicting, and they're not always going to align. So I would love to talk about, I think, the way that these two social organizations um, could potentially interact with each other, especially given that this is kind of new territory that we haven't traditionally seen in MMOs. Or we've always seen kind of single organizations that people are a part of, not multiple.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that's going to be a huge impact to the game itself. Um, Personally, from the way I look at it, is that your guild is going to come first. You can only be in one guild at a time. But the node that you're in, that's also home, right? So, like, let's say if your node needs to be sieged by your guild, like, what do you do? Whose side do you choose in that situation? Like, let's say your guild is home to the node next door, and they've been trying to outlevel the node that you're in, that you happen to be in before you join them. Do you switch sides? Do you become a Benedict Arnold, or do you just like, kind of stand back and let them do what they're gonna do?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Um, and to elaborate on that point a little bit, I know I think Stephen Sheriff was asked at one point during one of his Q&As, like, what is the premier social organization that is going to really drive um, player interaction? And he actually pointed to node citizenship and said, nodes are going to be the penultimate um, I guess, social organization, even above guilds potentially, because again, you have so much investment, personal investment in your land that is going to be a part of that node. So if you potentially are in a node that you're a citizen of and you have a guild that you're a part of that is sieging your node, um, it becomes a really tough decision then because you are standing to lose your homestead or your house and everything that you've put into it, all the time that you've put into it, which, as has been stated on previous live streams, is not going to be insignificant. It's also like the way that I've seen these homesteads kind of build up. It really seems like the heart and soul of a lot of characters are going to be put into them. So to lose that would be kind of catastrophic, I think, to a player.
yeah,
So I am very interested in seeing like how that plays out and how that also plays out with, I guess, solo players or people who are not parts of guilds. And if a guild being predominant in a node, um, would that force kind of solo players who also just happen to be citizens in that node to almost join the guild? Um, how would their, I guess, their goals align?
yeah. I can completely agree. I mean, it's gonna be a really complex decision for a lot of people. Cypher, what do you think?
Well, on that note, like you were saying, the player is going to lose a lot if their node is being seized by their own guild. At that point, I think it would be up to the guild, or I think the guild should, reimburse that player. They're losing everything, so I would definitely expect the guild. I mean, at least I would pitch in for that to give back resources or gold or whatever it is that was needed to kind of help them get back on their feet. Of course, so I think that's going to be a big thing, and a lot of people are going to have to make that sacrifice, um,
Yeah.
or just leave that guild because at that point, like you're losing everything, and if your guild's not going to help you afterwards, then what was the point in you joining that guild? You're back to square one, and your guild has all this shit. So
No, I
there's going
definitely
to be
agree.
a lot of back and forth, a lot of fighting with it, I believe,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to create rifts in some guilds and players.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
100%. Yeah. Especially since nodes do have a solid cap for how many people can actually live there.
Yeah.
There's going to be inevitably some people are going to be outside of that node that you're in. So I guess as a player, you're going to want to really know that you can trust your leadership to basically take care of you if that happens.
Mhm.
Like if you feel like your leadership is the kind that just will roll over you because you're in the way, is that a guild that you really want to be part of, even if they're
Absolutely not.
successful? Especially in that situation. And to Blazebot's point, there is a ton of investment that will go into your node. There's the reliquary, right? There's basically uh, the node advancement from basically the village stage up to metropolis stage. Your house, if you're lucky enough to get one that's inside of the node itself, will go from being a modest home to being a mansion. And those are going to be super expensive. Those are going to be things that you could potentially trade to another player for hundreds of thousands of gold or in-game currency, right? Um, like those are not going to be things to sneeze at. And not to mention, the resources in the node itself, whatever you have there, once that node siege is declared, your resources are locked. They're potentially able to be pillaged at that point if your guild takes it over.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of incentive for you to pick some guild that you're part of that's local to your node specifically, rather than to join a larger guild that's part of another node.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, and then on that note, I'm sure that a lot of guilds are thinking about this, but trying to, I guess, keep all of your members within a single node seems like it would be probably a good idea to just try to keep everyone's goals aligned and keeping everyone together and not making sure or making sure that not anyone gets the short end of the stick where they could lose everything in a node siege.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, if you want to play the markets and knowing that these nodes each have their own individual localized markets and knowing that they all have kind of their own subcultures of you gotta go to this place to gather X material or to purchase X material. Um, like trying to balance people who want to spread out for that aspect and to be able to help the guild by providing a specific type of resource from a node that maybe they're a home of or a citizen of that could be a separate driving factor, and I'm curious which one is going to end up winning out. Are you going to have you know guilds that pretty much exclusively live in a single node? Are you going to have guilds that try to spread out more in order to gather more resources and um, be able to pool more resources, or is it going to be kind of a mix of both, where guilds try to choose like a home node that will be their node, and then they branch out into the surrounding nodes with a few members in order to just kind of take advantage of um, if those other nodes are to advance and being able to take advantage of those advanced features of a node or those advanced rewards that I guess you kind of get from being a citizen of a leveled node.
Yeah, exactly. There's also going to be, from what I remember, guilds that are basically like honored guilds. I forget what the exact term was, but essentially there's a couple slots in each node that goes to the guilds that have contributed the most to it, that offer extra perks, extra benefits. So to a certain extent, I think there's a lot of incentive for your guild and the part, that community that you're part of, to really stick to one node and just put as much as you can possibly put into it. But to your point, like I already know guilds that are planning to spread out, that their whole goal is to create like commerce networks, to basically have like little establishments in multiple nodes and just spread out. And they're not really going for like domination of a single node, but they're more going for like almost like a cabal type network, right? So I think there's definitely play
Mhm.
there for each strategy type.
Yeah, no, it's all very interesting, and I'm I'm very curious to see what ends up happening when Ashes actually comes out.
Yeah.
Um, and then I know all that is also separate from then the castles, of course, which have their own special nodes, and the guilds vying for those. So that's
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot of fun.
See, like to me, the difference between having enough influence to basically really invest in your node and then try and take over a castle, to me, those two things are almost incompatible, right?
Hmm.
Because it takes a ton of effort from what they've described to really take a castle and then to hold it. Like you have three level 3 nodes attached to your castle that you have to maintain by yourself. No other guilds can help you maintain those. And so that means that you're pretty much putting effort into it 24/7 to keep those things leveled, to get them to a stage where they're defensible. So that way, every single month when you're sieged, you can basically hold on to what you've worked so hard for. So in a sense, like having a castle kind of precludes you from having really heavy roots in a local node. Which I think is going to be kind of an interesting compromise to see which guilds do that, and then what they lose out on after a while of doing that. Like if, like, let's say they decide, hey, I'm tired of upkeeping this castle every single month. We've been doing it for 10 months now or something. Like I want to break. Now all of a sudden they don't really have a home, and they've been left out when it comes to the nodes around them.
Yeah,
So,
so that is something that I'm actually curious about with their implementation because I know that the way that they said it, if you are a member of the guild that owns a castle, you are automatically a citizen of all three of the nodes that are the military nodes around it. I am unsure about citizenship then for the other node that you may have been a citizen of precluding you attacking and taking the castle. So I'm curious if they allow you to have a sort of citizenship of four nodes at once, the three castle nodes, and then also the node that you were a citizen before the castle was taken, or if that citizenship is unique and non, or
yeah.
in that you're not allowed to have multiple citizenships and it goes away.
From what I understand, you're not allowed to have multiple citizenships within the node system itself. I may be
Mhm.
wrong. That might have been updated at some point.
No, you're correct
Um,
about that. So within regular nodes, you're not allowed to have
yeah.
multiple citizenships. However, it being a castle node, I don't think we've gotten ever clarification about whether you can be a citizen of a regular node and a citizen of the castle nodes, because it does seem odd that if you take a castle and you were a citizen of a metropolis with a mansion, um, I don't know what would happen if you lost your citizenship to that metropolis. That
Right.
that sounds like it would be pretty bad for
That would be really
taking a
bad.
castle.
So
So,
I know Stevens mentioned before that the castle system is separate from the node system. So
mhm,
it could be possible that you could maintain your citizenship in a node, but the one thing to consider is that you have to still upkeep the taxes on whatever you own in that node, right?
mhm.
And so if most of your time is going to the castle to basically upkeep that, when do you have time for, the stuff that's in the other node?
Yeah, and that's something I'm also curious about. So the way that the nodes have generally been defined for how they gain experience is that anyone, whether they're like a citizen or not, if they are doing quests or like doing activities rather within that node, that is contributing to that node's advancement. Um, for the castle nodes, them being slightly separate, and you being automatically a citizen of all three, I'm curious if you need to be specifically doing tasks on each of those castle nodes' lands in order to gain the experience for them, or if it's a more broad, as long as you are gaining experience in some way, it's contributing to the castle node. Because in the latter, it does give you the option to potentially still upkeep with your taxes and um, help contribute to a node that you are a primary citizen of,
Mhm.
without necessarily needing to spend all that additional time um, with the castle nodes. But if not, then you're totally correct in that that's a huge time investment.
Oh yeah. That to me is going to be kind of the key that we need to figure out. Because at a certain point, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to lose out on potentially having a metropolis that you have a home in, or do you want to go straight for the castle? And I'd say it kind of depends on the player mindset of the person that's trying to do it, right. Where I think a lot of guilds are made up of lots of different types of people, so you almost need like a guild that's like solely dedicated to this one thing. Which I don't think there's really any guilds out there like that at the moment. Not that I've seen in our community, at least.
Yeah, not that I've either come across either.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, there might be like one out there, but I haven't I haven't seen it. They all want to do kind of both, and I don't know if that's gonna be possible.
Yeah,
All right.
and I'm sure that people don't want to like necessarily say no to players who want to work on one. They are two
Yeah.
separate systems. They just have so much overlap that it's going to be uh, very interesting to see what people can partake in and really master. Um,
Exactly. All right. So that's gonna bring us to the end of that part. We're almost at the end of the stream itself. Actually, we're coming up on an hour here. Um, so thank you very much, Blazebot, for jumping on with us. I really do appreciate you coming in. You're always welcome to join us on future podcasts as well. And we might edit how we do like some of the structure of this. We're kind of just playing around with it at the moment. To anyone that's watching or anyone that watches the stream later on, we are wanting people to jump in and basically participate in this. What our ideas with it is basically to do short segments where people can talk about a topic that they're really interested in. So if you're interested in jumping on, check out the Discord, discord.gg/ember, where you can then join in, talk about the game. If you're interested in joining our guild, you can apply to the guild itself. Thank you very much, Blazebot, for hopping on.
yeah, and thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah,
Bye.
it's a pleasure, man.
Have a good one.
All right, so we're almost done here. Sorry for any last minute things you wanted to go over, any topics that you've been thinking about?
No, actually, I think we've gone over most of the stuff that I was interesting in my mind, especially the naval stuff. That was huge for me.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of one of the only things that I was really only thinking about, since I'm really curious about it. Is there's so many different variables there, so many different things you can do. But I think that we've done pretty good for this episode. I think maybe leaving other stuff for the next episode would be a better idea. That way we have more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off then for the night. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you guys supporting us. If you're interested in joining the guild, again, discord.gg/ember. Jump in the Discord, apply. We're going to be one of the PvP focused guilds on our server that we're planning to go for. Most likely we'll be aiming towards like a central server if there is one, or an East Coast server. Most of our people have been with us for years at this point. We've been around for like 6 years as a group. So we have a lot of history, a lot of good times, a lot of fun times that have kind of built us to what we are today. So if you're interested in checking us out or want to know more, drop on by. Thank you everyone for jumping in the stream. Thanks Decap, Kenny for following. I just wanted to call you guys out because I saw you guys follow at the last minute there. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your night.